Well, evening of the 2nd of May, and a dilemma. There's quite a breeze here at Lound Wood, and the dilemma is, do I trap just here in the lee of this hedge, or do I go just inside Lound Wood, where it is still relatively protected but is prone to the wind coming from the northeast, which it is. It's a clear sky at the moment. I anticipate some low cloud and mist and murk coming in off the North Sea, and tomorrow it's forecasted to rain all day. So I've decided to come out here this evening and give it a go. It was May the 4th last year when I came here. Similar conditions, didn't get a great list of moths. Don't think I even got 10 species, to be honest, but we'll see what happens once I've decided where I'm going to trap. Well, I'll be switching the light on and the generator very shortly. And you can see that at the moment the cloud is rolling in from the North Sea, which is good, so it'll help to keep the temperatures up. They're not forecasted to go low anyway. The lowest is forecasted to be about 10 centigrade, but that's in the early hours of the morning. And this low cloud off the North Sea will be replaced by a frontal system, which is apparently moving up to give us the wet day tomorrow. So this is the ideal conditions really for moth trapping. Doubt if it'll be any good tomorrow, so tonight it is. But do have a moth already on the list, and it's a micro moth, a rather nondescript species, but when you look at it closely it is fairly well marked. At least some individuals are better marked than others, and it's Capua vulgana. It's a tortrix species. I'll put a photograph in here, and it was just nectaring on the cow parsley that you can see in the lower right of the screen, but it's starting to get darker. The breeze is still prevalent, and I don't think it's forecasted to drop either, but not the warmest of breezes, but we may well get a few moths. So we await the switch on. Well, we're off and running. Moth trapping in the Great British countryside. In this instance, about half a mile just north of the village of Eakling. The hedge that you can see runs from east on the right of the screen to west. It's always been a good place for migrants, and talking of migrants, the first of the silver wines have arrived in Nottinghamshire in the last 2 days. So we did catch silver wine on May the 4th last year, I remember. Maybe we'll hit lucky again. Always nice to catch a migrant. Well, it's feeling very pleasant. That breeze is just getting up now, because I was just about to say that I think the breeze has died down, and for a period of time it did. And it felt very nice, very pleasant. It's just started to pick up, and you may well hear it blowing through the trees just at the entrance to Lound Wood here. But we've got a couple more moths in. There's another Capua vulgana which has arrived. That's the rather plain looking tortrix, and the first macro moths are in, and it's 2 green carpets. Not entirely a surprise. Green carpet's a very common moth, but it's an incredibly beautiful moth. I have a thing for green moths, as you probably know, but at least moths are indeed flying. And the temperature at the moment is still going down. The thermometer's saying 15 centigrade, but I think it's just sorting itself out and finding the correct temperature. But at least we've got a few moths. Well, I have shown you green carpet before, but what a spectacular moth it is. And of course, those out now are the forerunners of the first brood, so they're all in a really good condition, especially this one, beautifully marked. Thankfully, this is a common moth, and again, it's a case of a common moth being neglected and almost a throwaway species. Yeah, a lot of moth trappers, oh, it's just a green carpet, pass me a rarity. But you couldn't ask for much more in a moth than this. Beautiful sage green ground colour to the wings, various darker markings verging on black, especially those two almost triangular markings on the foredge of the wings, and in really worn and faded specimens, those two black triangular marks, although faded, can be the key to an identification, because they'll remain while the rest of the scales have faded. But a beautiful moth, it really is. It's one of my favourites, green carpet, and often occurs in good numbers at MV Light, and you'll get it in your garden, there's no doubt about that. Beautiful. About 50 minutes of the session has gone. I've had 2 common carpets in now, but what's recently just come in, 2 of them, 2 lunar marble browns. This night is very reminiscent, certainly in terms of weather and the lack of moths, to May the 4th 2023, and I'll put the results up, if I remember, from last year up on the screen. But interestingly, not counting lunar marble brown, which I did get on May the 4th last year, the 3 species that I have had this evening earlier, which are Kapua, Vulgana, green carpet and common carpet, I didn't get. Every year is different in some way, but we shall see how it goes, how it transpires. I think we'll struggle to get to 10 species after 2 hours. I plan to stop for 2 hours. I doubt whether there'll be anything that will give us the encouragement to stay for longer, but we'll see. That's the beauty of moth trapping. You never know what's going to drop in from up there. It wants to hurry up. Well, due to the lack of moths currently, I need to show you this so you've got something to see. But this is one of the now 3 lunar marble browns that's coming, one of which is a female actually, and I'm going to try and see if I can get some eggs off her, because I've never seen the larva and I'd really like to see and photograph the larva given the opportunity. This is one of the 2 males that's arrived. It is a very attractive moth. I do like lunar marble brown, and I remember seeing my first ones, and I think they were here at Lound Wood many years ago. But very attractively marked. The thorax is typically hairy, and the wings quite variable, but the markings that you see on the wings are a constant feature of any sort of individual. It's just the ground coloration that can vary. This one, the forewings do have a quite dark grey ground coloration. Some have a fair degree of white on them. It's a lovely moth. Often occurs in good numbers, especially where you've got lots of oak if you're trapping in woodland. So there's a species that I like on my garden list, but that's yet to happen, and I don't anticipate getting one very soon, because I tend not to trap at home early in the year because it's just not really worth it. Not in the middle of a market town like Market Warsaw. you need good habitat if you're trapping moths early in the year. Well, a fifth species of moth has crept in, and it's a micro, surprisingly, because yeah, the breeze has sort of got up and stayed. So I was surprised when this turned up, and it's not a moth that I've caught for many years, really, to be honest, and I think the last time may well have been here or at Curtain Wood. But it's a small moth with a large name. Get ready for this, get your pen and paper ready, because it's Semioscopus steinkelneriana, a much bigger name than the size of the moth. But this is a rather tatty moth. It's lost the ends of the wings, and so it'll be photograph time. I will see if it'll stay still, and we'll get a bit of footage of it hopefully in this pot. But there's two Semioscopus that fly this time of year, Semioscopus avellanella, and then this one, Semioscopus steinkelneriana. And they are very similar. They can be quite difficult to tell apart, but you'll occasionally find them on the trunks of trees by day. But it's a year or two since I've seen one of these, so that's nice. That brings the current total of species to 5. Something else has to come in, surely. Well, here is that Semioscopus steinkelneriana. It is very similar to the other Semioscopus that we get here, and that's avellanella, but that tends to be a greyer species than this. The ground colour doesn't show very well here in this light, and if anything, there's a more sort of warmer brownish tone to the background coloration of the wings of Semioscopus steinkelneriana here. In terms of markings, they are very similar, so it pays to check. But it's a nice moth to get. Just a shame it's not in better condition, so I'll put photos in, and I'll probably put photos in of both species so you get an idea of how similar they are. But a nice moth to get. Let's hope that some more come in. It is a very disappointing session so far, although on the whole it may well transpire to be about the same as a year ago. I did expect a little bit more moth activity. There's very little flying around. There's not even many flies visiting. There's a few small crane flies that have turned up, and the odd caddis fly, but very little else. That's always a good indication of the number of moths that you're likely to get. The more flies, the more moths. But as I mentioned before, it's always interesting to look at between the years, the different years, what you get one year compared to another. And this year I would certainly say we're later than a year ago. Certainly by this time a year ago, to the early part of May. All will change when we get into the second half of May, provided we get some decent weather for moth trapping. And that's been a big key factor from people that I've heard from. They've all had the same conditions and the same poor year as I've had, really, in terms of being able to get out and moth trap. It's got to improve as 2024 on what it's been so far. What a strange trapping session. Devoid of moths, just 5 species. I don't think I've had 10 moths of those 5 species. And there's nothing flying now. Early on, just before I started to run the trap, there was the odd green carpet flying around. That's the green carpet that's thinking about leaving the light now. But then they've stopped flying. You usually get them coming up the side of Lound Wood here on from the right. but always used to get moths coming out of Lound Wood from directly behind the light years ago when Dillis and I trapped here. But I am surprised at the lack of moths. I wasn't too far away from here earlier on today. It was a lovely day, it was windy, but there were lots of micro moths. Pamen red yellow, which is a cracking little tortrix. Get it along this hedgerow here, but it's a species that I don't think I've ever recorded at light, and yet it's a beautiful little tortrix. But there were a number of micro moths. I probably saw more moths today than what I've seen this evening. In fact, that's pretty certain, thinking about it now. It could be the breeze that is still going on. The breeze does feel cool, and it certainly takes the edge off the temperature, but I would have still have expected a few more moths than what we've had. A disappointing session. Well, in view of the lack of moths, the cool breeze, which seems to have just gained momentum in the last 10 minutes or so, there's just nothing flying, nothing coming in. The only other moth that I've had coming in the last sort of half an hour really has been an Agonopteryx heracleana, not the most sparkling and exciting of individuals, and I think it would pay me to call it a day, or call it a night so to speak, tonight, and wait for a more suitable evening and give it another go. So it's off with the light.